have 30 books stacked up right here. You can't see them, they're just out of the frame, but they're like yay high. So let's just get into this so that I don't blabber on too much before we get started. Okay, so first I want to go over the books that I bought when I was in California last summer. Where are those? Okay, so the first book I have to share with you today has a great title, and I only bought it because of the title. I Love Dick by Chris Kraus. I've seen this book online in pictures before, and I always thought it was so funny. And so when I saw it in a bookshop in San Francisco, I just had to get it. This book follows our main character, who's like a grown married woman. She meets this man named Dick, and she slowly becomes obsessed with him. And she starts writing him all these like love letters. Her husband gets in on it, he's writing him letters as well. And it's kind of like the story of this obsession. And there's also a lot to do with like art in there. Like she's turning it into, I don't know why I did this. She's turning it into an art project. And Dick very much does not want to be a part of it, and he thinks she's a freak. So there's the first book. At that same bookstore I also got Ripe by Sarah Rose Etter, and this is a signed copy, so that was really cool. Can't lie, I also picked this one up because of the cover. I just love this cover. I think it's so beautiful. This book follows a woman who's working in a Silicon Valley startup, and she's absolutely miserable and she hates her life. But then throughout all of this, there's also this like black hole that's her constant companion throughout her life, which sounds weird, but she manages to put it in there like very well. And it's a lot about like how capitalism is awful, so of course I loved it. I did already read this, spoiler alert, but probably not gonna talk about it anywhere else, so here it is. Okay, then I went to, shit, what's it called? What is it called? I have the thing right here. The Ripped Bodice. I had the little bookmark. I went to the Ripped Bodice in LA. I got 2 books. The first was People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. This is my first ever Emily Henry book that I bought and read. This book follows Poppy and Alex, who were best friends like their entire lives. They used to go on all these vacations together, and then something happened on a vacation a couple years ago and they stopped talking. So this book follows with that all in the past, as Poppy asks Alex to go on another vacation with her, pretending that it's part of her job, but it's actually not a part of her job. So it's like a friends to lovers romance story, which I liked a lot. I also got a book I haven't read yet, so that's Psyche and Eros by Luna McNamara. This is a retelling of Psyche and Eros. That's all I know about it. But it's a romance, and I wanted to give it a shot. And then I went to the last bookstore in LA, which was magical. The first book I bought there was Hollywood by Charles Bukowski. I don't know why I bought this book. I've heard a lot of bad things about this author. But I was at the last bookstore and they had a section for like local writers, and he was on there. So I just felt like it was like a perfect book to buy for like my LA trip, especially because the title is Hollywood. So that's the only reason I bought that. I don't know what happens in this book. And then this book I need to give a little bit of context for. So while I was on vacation, I brought with me Scammer by Caroline Calloway, which is also part of this book haul. I just bought it before these books. This is Caroline Calloway's autobiography, well, her memoir. If you don't know who Caroline Calloway is, then that's crazy and you're not online nearly as much as I am. Caroline Calloway is like this Instagram influencer who's gotten into a lot of controversy based off of like scams that she's done, which haven't really been like scams, to be honest. But she got really famous because her best friend, her old best friend Natalie, wrote this like cutthroat article about her in The Cut. And it was really well written, and like accused Caroline of faking her Instagram posts, and Natalie like took credit for her Instagram posts that made her famous. It was this whole big thing, just stupid internet drama, but I'm obsessed with it, and I'm obsessed with Caroline Calloway. So of course I had to buy her memoir as soon as she came out with it. And it just talks about her life. Like there's not really much else to say. It talks about getting canceled, it talks about the suicide of her father, it talks about her reaction to when Natalie wrote that article about her. This is actually much better than I thought it would be, I gotta say. But that's context, because at the last bookstore I also bought Adult Drama by Natalie Beach. And yes, this is the Natalie I was just talking about. This is the one that wrote that article about Caroline Calloway in The Cut. And after that, she got a book deal, and this is her book. This is a series of essays that I haven't read, but that article was so well written that It makes me want to see what her actual writing is like. I also just realized I was saying Carolyn, it's Caroline, but in my head I always say Carolyn, so just give me a break. So those are the books that I bought in California. I also went to Pittsburgh with a friend this summer, so let's do those books next. Okay, so the first book for my Pittsburgh trip is You Can Make This Place Beautiful by Maggie Smith. This is a memoir. Maggie Smith is a famous poet. You might know the poem Good Bones, and she wrote that. So the writing in here was amazing to begin with. But this is a memoir that follows her divorce and the story of like how her and her husband broke up and what her life has been like afterwards with her children. Loved this. Spoiler alert, I have read it. I did love it. I would highly recommend it. Next, I got Either Or by Leigh Batman. This is the sequel to The Idiot, which is her first book, which I read and I really liked. I read it in my Reading Phoebe Bridgers Favorite Books video, so if you want to check that out. The first book follows its main character, Selin, I think is how you say her name, and she's going to Harvard and she becomes obsessed with this boy and she follows him to Hungary. The first book, it's like, I just felt like I wasn't smart enough to get a lot of it, but I still enjoyed it, so I did want to pick up the sequel. Next, I have The Illness Lesson by Claire Beams. This is also an autographed copy, so that's cool. The only reason I bought this is because I follow the embroidery artist who made this cover on Instagram, and I love her work. So that made me want to pick up the book. This book follows our main character who runs like this school with her father, but then all these red birds start descending into the town and the children at the school start getting sick. I think it also has a lot to do with like feminism because she's like a spinster in the book. I started reading this at one point, but I just wasn't in the mood for it, so I put it down. Next book is Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore by Robin Sloan. Another booktuber hauled this once and she said it glows in the dark, but I think she was lying because I've never seen this book glow in the dark. All I know with this book is that it follows a bookstore that has like these secrets. That's all I know. I remember, I think it was Jen Campbell on BookTube recommended this once, and I've been thinking about it ever since, so I wanted to pick it up when I saw it. And the last book I got in Pittsburgh is The Last White Man by Mohsin Hamid. This book follows a man who wakes up one morning to find himself transformed. Overnight his skin has turned dark, and the reflection in the mirror seems a stranger to him. At first he shares a secret only with an old friend, but soon reports of similar events begin to surface. Across the land, people are awakening as a different race. So that's the gist of this book. I've read, I can't think of the name of his other book, Exit West, a while ago, and I loved that book, so I really wanted to give him another chance. I didn't even know he had written another book, and I was very excited when I saw this. Okay, and the rest of these books basically have no order to them at all, so let's just dig in. Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson. This is the Secret Project book number 3. I have already read this, spoiler. But I will say, like, the art in this, let me see if I can find a good one. The art is so beautiful. I really liked the artist they chose for this one. But this book follows two main characters, Yumi and Painter, who, this is a very complicated book to explain now that I'm thinking about it. But Painter basically lives in a world where like nightmares come to life and they roam the streets, and the only way to subdue them is by painting them and changing them into something else. And then Yumi lives in a society where she is this religious figure, and every day her whole plan has to go by ritual. So she has to like be changed, she has to bathe in a hot spring, she has to stack a bunch of stones to call in the spirits, and the spirits help the town. However, one day they wake up in each other's bodies, essentially. Painter wakes up in Yumi's world as Yumi, and Yumi is there as a ghost while Painter is inhabiting her body. And the story takes place from there, where they try to figure out what's going on, why this happened, and how to save their world. Next we have Manhunt by Gretchen Felker Martin. This book is a horror novel that follows these women who spend their days traveling, hunting feral men and harvesting their organs. So, that sounds great. It was also blurred by Carmen Maria Machado, which is why I picked this up, because I love her and I trust her opinion. So I would really like to see what I think of this. And I want to read more horror. It's just like a genre that I like, but I never really know what to read other than Stephen King, so I'd like to dip my toes into that a bit more. Sex and Rage by Eve Babbitt. I read, what's it called? Black Swans is what it's called. It's up there. Which is a collection of short stories by Eve Babbitt. I really liked them, so I wanted to pick up her novel. I don't know what this is about. The back says, about a dreamy young girl moving between Los Angeles and New York City. I'm sure it'll be good. I like Eve Babbitt's writing, and I really want to read more by her. Another book that I know nothing about, Slouching Towards Bethlehem by Joan Didion. This one I don't even have like an inkling. I just know that it's Joan Didion and I want to read more Joan Didion because I really liked Play It As It Lays. And I really love this cover, so I wanted to give this a shot. After that we have Book Lovers by Emily Henry. This follows our main character Nora Stevens, who is a cutthroat literary agent. She's very stereotypically like a girl boss, a city girl, unapologetically, and she takes this trip with her sister to like a very rural town in North Carolina, and there she meets another person involved in her industry. I think he's an editor, and things take off from there, and it is a romance book, as all Emily Henry books are. I have already read this one, I have liked it a lot. Women Talking by Miriam Towes, I don't know, I'm sorry. This book follows a community of Mennonite women who for 2 years were haunted in their sleep by demons assaulting them. And it turns out it was actually the men of their community drugging them and then raping them in their sleep. This book doesn't follow those events though. It happens afterwards when the women of this community are gathered together deciding whether they should stay and live out their lives or if they should leave because of what happened to them. Then there's another book I don't know anything about, La Bona by Tessa Moshfegh. Unfortunately, I do not want to know anything about this before going into it, so I will not be reading the back. All I know is that it's a horror novel, and I love the cover so much. And I haven't had much luck with the Tessa Moshfegh. The only book that I really like of hers is My Year of Rest and Relaxation. Her other books that I've read have been like, eh. But I am excited for this one, and I am still hopeful that I'm going to like another book of hers just as much as I like My Year of Rest and Relaxation. A very, very, very popular read that I was very, very late to the bandwagon with, Normal People by Sally Rooney. This book follows two main characters, Connell and Marianne, and it follows them, it's like a love story. It follows them through high school when Connell is too afraid to like tell anyone he likes Marianne because she's an outsider. It follows them into college and afterwards. I did read this book and I did really love it, and I'm glad I picked it up. This next book I also know nothing about, and that is The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reid. This book I didn't mean to buy. It was like already in my cart in Book Outlet, so when I checked out, it just automatically merged with my new cart. So I didn't mean to buy this, but I have it now. And the back says it's inspired by Hungarian history and Jewish mythology, which sounds really cool. It follows a main character, Evike, who's the only woman in her village without power, which makes her an outcast. And one day the king's soldiers come seeking a blood sacrifice and her village surrenders her. But then monsters attack them and they're captive en route, slaughtering everyone but her and the cold one-eyed captain. So the two have no choice but to rely on each other. So that's all I'm going to read on the back. But it sounds interesting. It sounds very fairy tale-esque, which I love. And I love mythology books, so I love that it's inspired by Hungarian folklore and Jewish mythology. I think it's going to be really cool. Scarlet by Genevieve Cogman. This book follows the French Revolution, but if you add in vampires, at least that's what I got from the back. It follows your main character named Eleanor, who works as a housemaid in the estate of a vampire, but she's the spitting image of a French aristocrat, so one day she's convinced to join these people to France and to aid them in a daring scheme. I picked this up because I like historical fiction. I want to read more of it. It's been so long since I read historical fiction. I also just thought the vampires were fun. And honestly, I was at a small used bookstore and I was just going crazy and buying everything that I saw, so this is one of the books I bought there. Next we have Babel by R.F. Kuang. Everyone knows what this book is about, but I will summarize. This book follows Robin Swift. I don't even know how to describe this, give me a second. This book follows Robin Swift, who was born in China, but then his mother takes ill and he is taken by a professor to London, where he resumes his studies. And from there he's accepted into Oxford, which is this, obviously it's a school, everyone knows that, but in this book there's also this magic system revolving around silver and languages. And so Robin joins this magic part of the school, but then he soon discovers that there's kind of like a mini rebellion going on where people are stealing the silver from the school. And this book has a lot to do with like imperialism, colonialism. It's very political, which I loved. Did read this. And you get all of that with the nice little like dark academia in there. It's really fun. I also bought all 3 books what's the series called? The Broken Earth Trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. So each book, we have first the 5th season, then the Obelisk Gate, and then the Stone Sky. This is also a very hard series to describe. Basically, it takes place in this world where there's this 5th season, every couple centuries or decades, it depends, where the world like breaks, and everyone has to go into survival mode, and it's like almost killed off humanity a couple times. So that starts happening in the very beginning of this book, and you're following 3 different characters, and they all have magic. And in this world, it's like, it's very looked down upon to have magic. There is, however, like a school where these people can go to be trained. So it's following one young girl who's taken away from her family and placed in this school. It follows another woman who is in the school, like higher up, as she goes on a mission for the school. And then it also follows another woman who has magic but who has not gone to school and is out there living an ordinary life. And she's the main character, I'd say, out of the 3. And her story begins with walking into her home to find the murdered body of her son, who was killed by her husband after he found out that her son had magic. So that's kind of how the series starts. The series, I can't go into these 2 because it's going to spoil it, but this is a high fantasy series that's really, really, really good. Next up is The Fragile Threads of Power by B.E. Schwab. This is a sequel series, so I can't really talk about this book in particular, but it's a spin-off of the Darker Shade of Magic series by B.E. Schwab. And that first book, A Darker Shade of Magic, follows this world where there's like different dimensions, different Londons. There's grey, black, white, and red London, and they all have different like stages of magic, where like red London is full of magic. Grey London is our current London where there isn't any magic. Black London has been cut off from the rest of the world because the magic got tainted. And in White London, the magic is like slowly dying. But in this world, there's also some people called Antari who can jump between these worlds, and only they can do it. And they're like the most powerful of the magic wielders. So this is a spin-off of that series. It does follow some of the same characters from A Darker Shade of Magic, but it also introduced a new cast of characters as well. And just this cover is very beautiful. It's not as beautiful as A Darker Shade of Magic, which I'll put up right here, because this is like the ultimate beautiful cover. The covers with this series are fantastic. They did a pretty good job with this one too. Then I got If It Bleeds by Stephen King. This is just a collection of his novellas, which I didn't, this is another one that slipped into the book outlet cart. I didn't know it was there, but it got there when I merged the 2, and I bought it without meaning to. So I'm always happy to have another Stephen King on my shelf. His stuff is really like hit or miss for me, but I'm willing to give it a shot. After that, we have The Last Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi. Oh, that's not what it's called. It's called The Last Tale of the Flower Bride. I'm sorry. I don't know much about this book. From what I understand, I thought it was like a retelling of Bluebeard, where this man marries this like beautiful woman, and her only condition is to like never ask her about her past. And then one day they have to go back to her childhood home for some reason, and stuff from her past starts crawling back up, and he gets more and more interested in her past, which he probably should leave alone, which he told her he would, but he didn't. And that's how the story takes off from there. Then this one was a real steal to find on Book Outlet. A Day of Fallen Light by Samantha Shannon. I'm so excited about this one. It's so big. This is a beefy book. How many pages is it? It goes into the 800s. I love that. This is the prequel to The Priory of the Orange Tree, which is a high fantasy book. It takes place in the world where there's these dragons, and there's like the good dragons and the bad dragons. The bad dragons destroyed the world, but there are still some, like, I think there are water dragons that some cultures like revere, and other cultures still see them as just as bad as the other dragons. I don't know why I'm holding it on an angle like that. That doesn't help you at all. And you get a lot of different like POVs in the novel. One is like the queen of the nation, one is her servant. It's a really, really good book. And this is the prequel series, which takes place in the same world, but I don't think you need to have read the other one first. And I'm really excited about picking this one up. And the last book is another book I know nothing about, so this will be very short and sweet. But it's very, very funny that I picked up this book, but I just could not help myself. Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. And do I know anything about this book? No. What I do know, or what I now know, is that it's over 1,000 pages. I know that's like peak pretentious bitch reading, peak fuckboy reading, but I'm here for it and I want to experience it myself. I want to be able to say that I've read Infinite Jest. Even if I'm not going to understand a word of it, I still want to give it a shot. I'm viewing this almost the same way I view like War and Peace, where it's just like a feat in itself to read, and I feel like you get bragging rights just because you read it. So I picked this one up because I saw it and I couldn't help myself. And there you go. Those are the over 30 books that I've bought over the past few months. This is a huge book haul, but I do want to buy some more books, so there will be another one coming at some point. Goodbye.